This call is now being recorded.
Hello, this is Candace.
Hey, Candace.
Hi, Candace.
Hello, hello. How is everyone?
Lovely day. Can you
Is
hear
it?
me okay, Candace?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, great. I've got
What is
a
that?
new setup here.
What's that background? Is that a wall hanging?
This is our Zoom room in our office.
Oh, pretty. Very
It
nice.
almost looks like a movie theater, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah. I'm in a hotel room in downtown Denver. So,
Nice.
yeah, at the Weird Curtis where it has all the games and childhood games and stuff. So I have a
Yes.
weird ice cream cone head behind me.
Well, you and I are both creative today then.
Yeah.
That's a great hotel. Every floor is a different theme.
Yeah. It's updated in the lobby if you haven't been here for a while.
I haven't.
It's got a half of an RV camper with a half of a Volkswagen Beetle bug in a one setting, and the other setting's like the tiles of a swimming pool, like a little swimming pool. So come stop in. It's really cute.
No, I'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I've got top of the hour, 1:00 here. Thank you all for joining today's Division of Housing State Housing Board meeting. We have a packed agenda with about 5 minutes for each of the project applications. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Anthea Martin. I'm the current chair of the board. We're going to kick off the meeting this morning or this afternoon with the annual election of officers. So we will elect the chair and the vice chair. Do we have any? LaDon?
I would like to nominate Anthea Martin for chair.
I second that nomination. Candace Payne.
Thank you, LaDon and Candace.
Me.
Are there any other nominations anyone would like to make?
This is just for the chair, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I move nominations be closed.
Thank you, Sam. So all those in favor signified by aye.
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 Any opposed? I appreciate everyone's continued faith in me. I'm happy to chair again for this year. Next up, we will have the nomination of the vice chair, and I would like to nominate LaDon. She has been a wonderful vice chair and has stepped in as needed to help me out. So I really appreciate her work in chairing these meetings and would like to have her continue to do so for this upcoming year.
I'd like to second that nomination.
Thank you, Sam.
I'd like to move nomination cease, please.
Thank you, Candace. All those in favor signified by aye.
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 Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Wonderful. Well, thank you all. Next up are the director's comments and budget update. I'd like to turn it over to Allison George.
Thank you, Anthea. And to kind of continue on with your note of the full agenda, I thought I would call attention to your budget that you have and the large number of applications for state funds. Okay. We currently have applications that we're reviewing, over 58 million. And just to put that in perspective, that accounts for 9 to 10 months out. And so that is starting to become more and more of a concern as we will start impacting the timeline of developments if we don't have the funding when they need to close. And so we are going to be looking carefully at these projects and also looking at what funding sources we might be able to bring to the table, like the revolving loan fund that was approved, Senate Bill 159, and what funds we might be able to support those projects so that we can continue this monthly pipeline that we've been working through historically. I mean, as long as I've been with the state, we've had this monthly application cycle. But as we're looking at current applications in excess of 9 to 10 months out, beyond where we've already committed funds, we need to be carefully looking at how we're underwriting the timing of how we're doing things. And so I just wanted to call that to your attention as we move forward. Any particular questions? Because I have some other exciting things that I wanted to chat about. Sam.
Thank you, Allison. One of the concerns I'm hearing is about some of the delays in contracting. Are you experiencing some of the same sort of questions from people in the industry? And if so, what is the division kind of doing to address it? Because I know that this is an unprecedented amount of dollars that the division has had. Historically has never had such a large amount of dollars to give away. And just kind of concerned, has the infrastructure responded accordingly in terms of, do you have additional legal help available to you, or what's the status?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Anthea, I don't know if you wanted to jump in first or if you wanted me to answer. Okay, I'll go first. Thank you. So first off, as we reported in our annual report in January, we saw a 500% increase in our grants and loans just last year. Unfortunately, we did not see a 500% increase in our staffing at that time. And so we did get behind. So with that, what we planned to do was hire people, because we have the authority through the legislature to hire people. But unfortunately, the hiring did not keep up with that demand. And so we currently still have 7 positions that are vacant on our contracting team. So I can't say enough how appreciative I am of our contracting team and the efforts that they've been making. So last year, we also brought the Attorney General's office in to try to help support this massive increase in our grants and loans that we were making. That wasn't enough. And so more recently, we've actually contracted with CHFA as well to help support this tremendous demand that we have in our loans. So this has all been temporary support to try to not only catch up, but also to allow us the time to hire the people that we need to do the work. And so we are deep in that process. In fact, we have interviews this week for positions, and we're hoping that we can make several hires from that posting. We also have a contract administrator, a higher level contract administrator as well, that's posted currently, that we're also hoping to hire from. So we're hoping to hire a couple of classifications from those postings. That said, we, I think, have had 7 or 8 postings over the last year. And we've been able to hire great people through that. It's the volume of hiring that we've been challenged by. And so that's why we've needed this constant process as we work to staff up to be able to support the efforts that we're making through our grants and our loans.
Well, thanks for that explanation. I certainly hear also about the challenges of hiring out there in the industry as well. So I can appreciate what you're saying. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anthea?
Allison, how will you be prioritizing the funds going forward? Will you continue to place a higher prioritization on properties that are providing very low income units?
That's a great question. So it depends on the funding source. And so we first look at the requirements of the funding source to see what those priorities are, because when they're passed through the legislature, oftentimes, most times, the legislature provides priorities to us. So for vendor fee, which is a tremendous source that we've been using, we do have to, according to statute, support more 30% AMI units. And so that will be an absolute priority for those funds because by law, we have to do that. And then, each funding source has a little bit different requirements. And so we're always looking at what those requirements are for those sources of funds. And so it really depends. If you want to test me, you can ask me the source and I'll tell you what I think the requirements are. And then I might have to phone a friend to make sure I'm telling you the truth.
All right. Excellent. Thanks. We can play that
Absolutely.
game later, maybe.
We'll do Jeopardy, funding
Yeah.
Jeopardy. Okay, so I do have two other things that I wanted to mention. Thank you. First off, so Candace Payne, thank you so much for helping host in Flagler. We did a Flagler, excuse me, and I appreciate your offer. I actually have spent the night in a snowstorm in Flagler as well. We did a housing summit in Eastern Colorado, and Candace helped host, and we appreciated that. Fallon Miller with our development specialist team put that together, and so that went off really well and exciting to bring more resources and thought processes about housing to our Eastern Plains, and so very excited about that. That happened last week. After I think it was a snowstorm that actually postponed the last one. Wasn't it a snowstorm? Darn the snowstorms on the Eastern Plains. And then also this is Community Development Week. And so it's highlighting federal funds actually. And so yesterday we did a celebratory event with Foothills oh shoot, I forgot the name of the development. I might have to phone a friend. But Congresswoman Pedersen and Governor Polis, flats at Ford Street. Thank you so much, Julia, in Golden. So everyone attended and celebrated the great things that can be done at both the federal, the state, and local level. So that was, and Anthea and Sam, thank you all for attending. I appreciate that. But this week is celebrating those efforts at all of those levels on coming together and making housing happen. So lots of good things happening and happy to share what we can. Any other questions folks have? Okay, well, thank you all very much, and I'll let you get to your busy agenda.
Thank you, Allison. Appreciate that update. We're going to move on to the project application review stage. We will start off with Wild Horse Ridge SFR. Presenting will be Andrew Atlee.
Thanks, Anthea. I think we have Wade Wood on the line with Involved Communities. I didn't see Ty on there, but Wade, I think you can probably cover it. So you unmute and chat about Wild Horse Ridge.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thank you for that, Andrew. My name is Wade Wood, and I'm with Involved Communities, and I'll just kind of open up with a little refresher on the project for everyone. Wild Horse Ridge is 119 units of new construction that we are building off Tower Road, and we closed the transaction in February of 2022 with an original commitment of $450,000 from DOH, and that is currently what has been approved and closed into this project. As an update of where we are with construction, we're about 60% complete with an expected completion in February of 2024. And we're currently experiencing some increased costs associated with a rising interest rate environment and higher anticipated costs on current trades with some of our lumber and HVAC categories. So we have a request into you guys for an additional $500,000 in soft funds, which would bring the total commitment from you guys to $950,000, which would be about $8,000 per unit for 119 units. You know, we've currently committed as much as we can of our developer fee into the transaction that would be approved by our investor to help fill the shortfall, and are seeking this request help fund some of these increased costs, as we have surpassed 50% in the halfway point of this project. So we appreciate you guys taking time to get us on the calendar here today, and review our application for these additional funds.
Thank you for presenting. I will recuse myself from this one just since it's a bellwether perm loan. Does anyone on the board have any questions? Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure the protocol, if I'm supposed to raise my physical hand or the little chat hand or whatever.
Chat
But
hand
anyway,
works just fine. Thanks, Nancy.
okay. I'm still new, so please forgive me if I'm asking, questions everybody knows. But I noticed not just on this application, but on many of these, that the request is doubled. Not just a percentage, but doubled. This one is, the original amount was 450 and they're asking for 500 more. That's not unusual in this round of applications. And so I'm wondering from staff, if you think that this is something that is going to continue. It makes it hard for the developers, I understand, to budget their projects, but it also makes it really hard for this board to budget. I really appreciated getting this little spreadsheet, about the various grants and how much money and so on. So how do we know, or how do you decide on, they ask for a certain amount and then you come back with a recommendation? How do you decide what that percentage is going to be? Hopefully that makes sense to you.
Nancy, this is Andrew Paredes. I'll take a shot at answering that question to staff. It's certainly been an art and a balancing act the last probably year, and getting harder and harder. I feel like, maybe I'm an eternal optimist, but I feel like we might be at the tail end of the continued meteoric cost rises. A lot of the costs that have gone up we've seen have been related to short-term interest rates. Construction loan interest rates a year and a half ago, when many of these projects started, were nominal. They were next to nothing. As the Fed has increased short-term rates over the last 2 years, that rate has gone up a lot. So that's added a huge chunk to what's real today from what they estimated realistically 2 years ago. I think that rise in short-term rates, many people say, are likely coming to an end or tailing off. So while they'll still be high, at least developers can know what they're anticipate construction loan interest going in. So hopefully that puts a little relief of pressure on these supplemental requests. As we're looking at these supplemental requests, we are really pushing our developers to also use some of that deferred developer fee to soak up some of the the increased cost and risk associated with the project, as there's both risk and return in projects. We are also pushing, relying on other partners, be it cities, counties, lending, funding partners, perhaps some second mortgage or mezzanine level affordable housing funders to step in and provide some additional funding as well, so that burden doesn't all fall on our state resources. Again, as we look at, as Allison said, so many applications for great worthwhile projects, we really are doing our best to balance all of these things, and it's not easy. That's why I can absolutely appreciate your inquiry and question as a board member, and that's something we struggle, fight and wrestle with every day at the staff level, trying to come up with the right recommendation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure that it's really difficult to make those final determinations and recommendations, but I did notice this trend, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't continue to increase. So thank you. Thanks for answering my question.
Thanks for the question, Nancy. James, I see your hand is raised.
Yes. I noticed in the write-up, Wade, that a lot of your trades didn't honor some of their contracts that you had. So did the company have any increased legal fees regarding those contracts with some of those trades that decided not to honor their contracts with you?
We did not. Some of those guys did not honor it, and they walked, and our contractor was able to find new sources and help get the project rebid with marginal additional cost outside of the hard costs themselves. And the project is currently 100% bid and settled now, and a lot of this took place in the late fall, winter holidays of 2021, prior to closing, when the markets were so volatile, and we had kind of had to commit to some numbers, earlier before closing than we would have liked to, given the loan product on this one with HUD. And, so it was more of just a timing thing, and there were not too many additional legal costs beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you for presenting, Wade. Next
you,
up
guys.
is Opagosa, and presenting today is Shirley Diaz.
Good afternoon. Representing Opagosa is Peter Hurley, and he is present. Oh, you're muted, Peter.
All right. King of technology here, Peter Hurley. Thank you. I won't bother going through the write-up. I'll assume everyone has read that. Appreciate your time today. A little background on this project. I'm really new to this too, as Nancy stated. Basically how this started, I was the chair of the planning commission. The town of Pagosa had 3 lots that we were going to contribute, and we're hoping developers would build affordable housing. We put out an RFP, we didn't get a single developer. So I am basically the guinea pig. I am going to do this project. We're breaking ground actually this week. Surveyor comes in to lay the stakes, excavator starts, etc. Currently, me and my fiscal sponsor will be putting in the cash. We have Alpine Bank that's given us a construction loan, and we are hopeful to get these grants to help us complete the project. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Peter. I'll start off with a question. It looks like you are a first-time developer of affordable housing, and that you've not had experience performing compliance on an income compliance on a project before, and that you will be pursuing some training. Can you tell me a little bit about that training and who you would be working with for that, and if you've already started it? Compliance is, as you know, really important on these deals.
That's correct. Well, I actually have compliance. The community, as expected, has been very helpful on this. Both the town, the county, the utility providers, with everybody. I have to basically do the same type of compliance. Matter of fact, I'll probably follow your lead or Chaffa's lead. Chaffa's my takeout load. So I have not started the training. I talked to Shirley about that. I am a CPA by trade, so I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I kind of understand the parameters of what needs to be provided. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but if there's training out there, I'm happy to take it, and looking for some recommendations on that.
Thank you for that. I think being a CPA, that gives me some comfort, and I'd like to just ask the staff that if there's any training that you all know of that we can give Peter some resources there.
Hi, Anthea. This is Ariel here. So
Hey, Ariel.
we actually on our OHFS web, or on our DOH website, we have a section for the Office of Housing Finance and Sustainability. Our asset management team has actually been working pretty hard to build a library of resources for this very thing. So staff will actually be working directly with these folks to assign the trainings that are relevant to the compliance as far as income calculations and items like that. And so they're all readily available on our website. We have a whole training section with all the previous recordings. So we plan to work closely with them to make sure we assign the appropriate trainings to set them up for success.
Great. So Ariel, am I hearing correctly that you will assign trainings then to Peter that he has to complete?
Yep. And so one of our great features with our Neighborly system that we work is we can assign those as tasks, and then we will have the direct link to the training that we would like for them to watch and participate in. So it's clear, so they don't have to stumble through our long list of trainings to figure out which ones apply.
Great. Thank you for that, Ariel. And Peter, as technology king, you've got some online trainings coming your way.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Thanks, Anthea. I guess this is a question for staff and mainly for my education. Since this isn't funded with tax credits nor any kind of federal dollars like, CDBG or home, how do you do compliance? How do you, what kind of standard do you set for it?
Oh, go for it, Andrew.
I was actually going to hand it off to you, Ariel, and explain how our state-funded projects get monitored at closeout.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone can take it. I'm happy with either of you answering.
Well, I'll jump in here just to kind of piggyback what we have, or what I was speaking to earlier. So with our state funds, typically we use home guidance as our safe harbor as we feel necessary. But when it comes to income qualifying folks, we do require Part 5 across the board, regardless of funding source, to make it easy on our grantees so they don't have to track too many different types of regulations to follow in that. And then a lot of this is laid out in our agreements for our state funds specifically. And so, like I said, I'm going to keep advertising this website because we've been working pretty hard to build a library of training. So, if we're requiring tenant selection plans for folks on rental properties, there's a great training on there that walks through it. We even have, we even have a training that breaks down how to use your contract as a resource so folks know what areas of the agreement are most applicable and can really guide them throughout the duration of this project to make sure they're staying in compliance. We also do lean in and have some trainings that speak a little bit to our state statutes, but some of those are a little bit vague in regulations, not as quite concrete as we see with our federal regulations. And then for folks who maybe don't know which income limits or rent limits would apply to their project. Again, on our website, we have this lovely matrix that shows folks which, and it links them directly to the limits that would apply to their project based on funding source. So I encourage all folks to check out this website. It's really come a long ways to be a resource to our partners to make sure they have the resources they need as they're balancing building the project, but also staying in compliance throughout the duration of it as well.
Thank you, Ariel.
Thanks, Ariel. Do you mind putting that in the chat for us all?
Yep, I'm grabbing that link right now.
Thank you. Great. Seeing no more questions, we'll move on to residences at Durango. And presenting is Shirley Diaz.
And with us today from TWG is Ryan Kelly presenting the project.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay? This is Ryan Kelly. I'm with TWG Development. So we've been working with the city and several partners on this project for a little while now. So we obtained through the DOH OTK funds to acquire a Best Western hotel for the rehabilitation of 72 units, and then also 48 new construction units on the back side of that property. So The city's been instrumental in this process. They obtained congressional funds of $3 million. And so we're really far along the way on the building permits. Those are coming in the next 30 to 45 days. We've gotten bonds from CHAFA as well as the county and city to kind of cobble those together. So from a financial package perspective, this thing's ready to go. The request was for $7.5 million. I think DOH actually funded about $1 million directly to the city. So that was offset, some adjustments made on your guys' end, but we're really excited about the project. Look forward to working with you guys. Yeah, I think this project's really set up financially well. Really kudos to the city to kind of get this off the ground. They really put their money where their mouth was to get it to work, and we're almost there. So a little bit of everything. I know the hotel conversions were a big topic, but to be able to throw new construction on top of that and really hit some of the bigger units, some 1 and 2 bedrooms in that mix, as well as some 30% units was huge. So appreciate your guys' support and happy to ask any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions from the board? Sam?
Ryan, thanks for the presentation. How big are the former motel units going to be? I see you're going to be renovating them and adding new kitchens. Could you describe any other renovations you're going to be doing as well? There's a couple of questions there. Sorry about that.
No, you're perfectly fine. Sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, they're about 600 square feet. So that was a real challenge, right? So trying to figure out the electrical loads and some different things. So we really worked hand in hand with CHAFA to figure out, all right, how do we really get a workable kitchenette unit with full-size appliances? So that was a challenge. And I guess in your brain, you think, oh, it's a hotel conversion. This is the fastest to get to kind of to order. But trying to get the electrical load, and then you're getting into an old hotel with, you know, the walls and all those different things. So that's a challenge. But I think we've got some renderings that I think we sent to you guys in CHAFA. We're really trying to make sure it's livable, right? So you're kind of confined to the square footage of what you have. So what we did was we really vetted the option that we combine units. We try to keep it the same, but I think where we landed was trying to get a good mix between the two. So I think that's why the new construction side, we really hit more of, you know, the 1 and 2 bedrooms where we have more studios and a handful of ones in the hotel. So we should have a really good sample size to really meet all family sizes across the board. So
in the write-up, it talked about the model kitchens, the remodel of the kitchens. However, it mentioned all the appliances. It left out a refrigerator, but I assume you're putting refrigerators in.
Yeah, that's correct. Refrigerators is in there as well. So,
okay. So these have been rather large motel units to begin with, then, huh? 600 square feet.
Yeah. So they're really set up pretty well, and that's what we loved about it originally. Is some of these you just get into and they just don't retrofit well for apartments. So I know some folks, even on the market rate side, have taken a motel or hotel and put a new sign on called apartments. That's not what we're getting at. So I think we really want to make it feel like it was intended to be an apartment and be livable and comfortable, really, at the end of the day. So.
Good. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. Next up is Highlands Trail SFR. Presenting is Pamela Gibson.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to present Ryan Hamilton and Chadrick Martinez with Four Corners Development, as well as their consultant, Adam Morgan.
Thank you, Pam. I'll go ahead and go through our short presentation. Thank you to the board for considering our request for additional funding. Obviously, we regret having to be here requesting it, but like many projects, we're experiencing some pretty significant cost increases from our prior application. Like many projects, it's primarily due to interest rates. Our construction rate has doubled. The perm interest rate has increased by more than 50%. This project also had some soils issues, which are requiring deep piers and just some general overall material cost increases. So that's the reason we're back here requesting additional funding. We've done all that to try to bridge that gap elsewhere with value engineering. We're deferring as much fee as we can and still have a feasible deal. the good news is the project is nearly ready to close. I think we're probably going to close next month and can start construction. We got through it. It was a very long entitlement process getting through the county approvals. And this is just a wonderful project. We've got 20 units at 30% or below. That's 23% of the project. So we're serving very, very low incomes. And thank you very much for your consideration. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. Next up is Ralston Gardens, SFR. Pamela Gibson will be presenting.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce George Thorne, who's representing Mile High Development and Brinshore Development, as well as Adam Morgan, their consultant.
Thank you. Pamela, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
This is George Thorne, and I again want to thank DOH and DOLA for continuing to being supportive of affordable housing, and in particular this project, the Ralston Gardens. I think we gave you a pretty good overview of it at the original presentation back in January. Everything Adam just said would apply to this project with the increase in interest rates, particularly because we had already done I think a very thorough job of value engineering, which we went back and repeated and got as much out of the project as we could, and still kept it as you can see in this depiction. It's a highly landscaped project because the city insisted on that. We're right up against the local community garden, which is a wonderful community asset in the city of Arvada, and it also is a wonderful environment that it creates for our tenants who will be living kind of around the garden environment with a lot of great outdoor space. So this is 102 units. Our original award, when added to the $1,750,000 increase that we're requesting, would be a total of $4,300,000. So that's really kind of the overview. The project is in great shape as far as being ready to go. We've got our building permit through the city of Arvada. KeyBank is our tax credit investor, as well as working with us on the construction loan and our perm loan. And again, the interest rate issues on both the construction and permanent loan are really almost 100% of what we're dealing with in terms of needing additional gap funding. So we really appreciate this opportunity to make our case, and I would ask for your consideration here. I think this is a great project. It's in a city that hasn't historically done a lot of affordable housing, and I think this project helps unlock the gate here and really got tremendous local support, including from the Urban Renewal Authority and the city. So Adam, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we'll hand it back so Anthea can keep running the meeting on time.
Yeah, nothing to add. Just, we have a lot of local support, as George mentioned. We've got the Housing Authority as well, as is going to be a special limited partner, and also providing some vouchers. So we're serving 8 to 30% AMI units.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam and George. I'd like to just note, it looks like you increased your deferred developer fee up to 94.7%. So I'm really happy to see that. You also have skin in the game here, a significant amount of that with the increase that you're requesting. How has Freddie Mac given you the thumbs up to defer that much of your developer fee and your equity investor KeyBank?
It's actually Fannie Mae. We're doing a Fannie Mae MTEBs through the KeyBank Capital Group, and everything so far, and Adam, you can chime in, but I believe we don't have that final commitment. It's going to be coming out next week, but they've seen all of our budget numbers and these numbers, so yeah. I don't think we have any issue there. We just did the same, almost exactly the same structure with the same team out at our Northfield project in Stapleton, and a very similar profile of our capital stack.
And we're trying all we can to get that number down a little bit as well with, you know, the most recent rates have come down a few basis points. So I think we're going to hopefully when we close, we can not defer all that full amount. I think that's the goal.
Okay, and then I have a question I'd like to direct more to staff. It looks like right now the per unit request for the supplemental is about more than 54,000 per unit, which is higher than the highest limit that was set for rural communities. Andrew, can you just speak a little bit to that and how you all got comfortable at that level? It seems really high.
Well, that is actually kind of the machinations of what we've been doing in underwriting over the last 4 or 5 weeks. The way the presentation is set up is that the first page gives you an idea of what the original supplemental ask was. If you go to the last page, it gives an indication of what the actual recommended award amount is, which is down at 42,000 a unit. So that is kind of where we ended up was lower than the ask. And to George and Ed Adams' credit, they're working hard to make it work, and we worked as hard as we could at the staff level to make our budgets work.
Okay, I'm not following that, but I'll talk through that with you next time you and I are on the phone. Any other questions from the board? Sam?
I think this is related to your question, Anthea, and Adam and George. I'm sorry if I didn't kind of get the answer, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in the write-up on this one, there was a large lump sum deferred developer payment in year 15 or something. Is that correct? How does that work?
So good question, Sam. So if in the event, obviously we're going to do what we can to try to get that down, hopefully with the slightly lower rate, or but in the event we do defer that much fee, and that fee we get to year 15 and that's not paid, the partnership agreement is going to require the general partner to make a contribution to pay whatever's left over on that. So they're going to have to pay that at year 15. To basically pay themselves.
I guess I would expect, but does George, how does that work for you? I guess is maybe the question. And does your investor have any concern that you're able to make that payment? Otherwise, they probably have some tax consequences if not.
But all I could say, Sam, and it's a very good question, is I think with the combination of Mile High Development and Brinshore, Brinshore brings a lot to this equation, and this is our 4th project together, and in my case, my 3rd project with KeyBank, who is the investor through their Key CDC, so they know us awfully well, and they know Brinshore well. So I think they took a look at the deal and the structure of the whole thing and thought, hey, if push comes to shove, these two firms are going to step up and do the right thing, and as we always have. So I don't like that any more than you like having to ask the question, but it is what it is. And in this time frame we're in, we're going to see a lot more of these kind of squeezes put on by these higher interest rates, attacking us on both the construction and particularly on the perm loan. With the perm loan, that's what really hurts on proceeds, which we, just a few months ago could be looking at, another $1 million, $2 million in proceeds on an almost identical deal. And today, just by virtue of the rates going up right now they've come down a little bit, but we have 2 weeks to close. We're keeping our fingers crossed. And I think, as Adam said, if things would hold as they are today, which they never do, we wouldn't, we would be okay with that, the deferred development fee issue. But if push comes to shove, we know that's what we're signing up for. So, and we think the project's a great project that I've got 6 or 7 years of my own time in it, and a city that's, counting on us to do everything we can do to bring these 102 units to Arvada. So we're going to be there.
Thanks, George. Appreciate the answer.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, George and Adam. Moving on to 7001 Colorado Boulevard, and presenting is Demetra English.
Hello, thank you. I'd like to introduce Scott McFadden and Robert Monroe to present 7001 Colorado Boulevard.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Demetra. And also with us on the phone is Lee Applegate, who represents the Commerce City Housing Authority. The Housing Authority will be a special limited partner in this project, which is an important source of funds and source of partnership to make it happen. So we want to thank you for your consideration of this request and your previous support. This will be the third time we've come before the board on this project. We were here 2 times last year for private activity bond allocations. There's about 17 million that has been transferred to the Housing Authority for this project, 7 of that coming from the state, which we're very appreciative of. This project is a 92 unit new construction project on a light rail stop in Commerce City, Colorado. This area of Denver, I call it the hole in the donut, in that it is surrounded to the south by Elyria-Swansea, which is moving north, from Thornton to the north, which is moving south. And then, the northern part of Commerce City around 104th Avenue is really the fastest growing part of the state of Colorado over the past 5 years, with tens of thousands of new homes. So with light rail access, we're able to access, both employment centers to the south, as well as commercial centers and residential areas to the north on the end line. So the project is 92 units. What is unique is that it is primarily 3 and 4 bedroom units. 63% are family units. That is relevant in that this area of Denver, or this target market area specifically, as specified in the market study, has 3 times the number of 5 bedroom or 5 person households as the overall Denver MSA. So, we think the product is well targeted to the market in this area. We will be providing a couple of things I think that are special and unique. We have a 2,000 square foot space that will be built adjacent to the clubhouse that is being leased at no cost to a nonprofit called Community Uplift Partnership that provides counseling for struggling adolescents, which is a very much a need population today. They're based in Commerce City. If you've ever been to the coffee shop in Reunion, they run that coffee shop. And so they counsel these kids, but also employ them, which I think is fantastic. And we're looking to support that. We also will be providing reimbursement for transit passes to try and incent transit use on the light rail, the multimodal stop that's directly adjacent to the site. So look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions from the board? Nancy?
Thank you. And thank you for this presentation. I'm sure that this housing is very much needed in that area, and it's going to provide housing for a lot of families. And I appreciate this nonprofit and their work that will be ongoing. Is there very much open space in that area? I'm sure there'll be lots of kids living in that development. Is there open space or trails? I'm not familiar with the area.
We are directly adjacent to the light rail stop, which once again is across a canal from us, a few hundred yards. There's access to the Platte River Trail System, which can take you north of Bar Lake and south to Chatfield. Directly adjacent is really a single family neighborhood that's historic, Adams City. But within a quarter mile, there is both an elementary school and a middle school with large facility, large playground facilities and fields and such. So we also are providing obviously a clubhouse with a fitness center that's probably for parents, but also a playground area and a barbecue area outside, which we think the families will congregate.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, for that question. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the application voting stage. Are there any board members that need to recuse themselves from voting on any of these projects? Okay, hearing none. Since I'm recusing myself from Wild Horse Ridge SFR, why don't we start with that one standalone and then we'll do the rest as a group. So I'd like to request approval for Wild Horse Ridge.
So
I
moved.
make a motion. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, LaDon.
So moved.
Second by Candace.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, Wild Horse is approved. Next up, let's vote on Opagosa, Residences at Durango, Highland Trails, Ralston Gardens, and 7001 Colorado Boulevard as a group. If I can get a motion for approval for those projects.
So moved.
Thank you,
I'll second.
James.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Nancy, for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Since we're in the voting mood, I'm going to back up. I believe I skipped the approval of the March 2023 meeting votes. So if I can get a motion for approval for the meeting votes.
Make a motion to approve?
Thank you, Sam.
Second.
Thank you, LaDon, for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you all. Last on the agenda today, we have Malid Mescal, who will be presenting on the preparation and training for the rulemaking hearing, which will occur on May 9th. I'll turn it over to you, Mo.
Great, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. Laura, do you mind stopping the presentation? I'm gonna share my own slide deck. Thank you so much. Give me 1 second while I get that up. Can you guys see the slide deck? I just gotta start it. Good grief.
No, we can see it. It's just
Yeah.
not as big.
What's that?
Oh, now we can see your screen.
Yeah, I just can't find the start the slide deck anymore. Oh, there's
Right there.
Thank you. All right. Very good. Can you guys see it as it should be seen?
Yes.
I can no longer see you, so please bear with me. All right, we're going to be talking about Anthea. Thank you so much for to do a prep. Before I get started, unfortunately, I can't see you since I'm presenting. It would be helpful to know how many of you were on the board when we last did a rulemaking hearing before you, which was on July 13th of 2021. I suspect maybe half of you.
I was.
I think half is a good estimate.
Okay, excellent. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. What you're going to be learning is a good part of the division, a small part of the division, I should say, does not do what you are normally used to seeing, which is doling out money. A good part, or the small part, is involved primarily in standards, construction standards, and installation standards, which we'll get into in more detail. And that is the Office of Regulatory Oversight. But before I jump into that, is Sam Albrecht on the call? Sam, are you on?
Yes, Mo, I'm here.
All right, great. For those who do not know me, although I was introduced briefly, I am the Deputy Division Director for Division of Housing, Mo Miskell. Prior to that, I was the director of what we referred to as the Office of Regulatory Oversight, which you see the slide here. Sam is my replacement, and Sam's been on board since October. And he will be running the rulemaking hearing before you. I'm just going to help prepare that transition. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me or Sam. Our contact information is at the end of this slide deck. But the Office of Regulatory Oversight is actually made up of two programs, as you see towards the end of the slide, the Building Codes and Standards section and the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program. Statutorily, the way the Office of Regulatory Oversight is, sorry, the Building Codes and Standards section is set up, and I'll show that to you in the next slide. Whenever it decides it's time to incorporate new codes, or in this case, implement a new bill that changes the regulation of modular construction, as you can see on this list, the installation and sale of manufactured homes, and a few other things, it has to go through a rulemaking process involving you, the State Housing Board. You are the decision maker in adopting any administrative rules to implement any statutory changes and make any of these code changes that I mentioned. So it's a unique aspect of what you guys have signed on to do, besides saying yes or no to funding projects. And we don't come and see you very often about this, probably every 2 to 3 years. As I mentioned, the last time we saw you was in 2021. You may be seeing us sooner than 2 years for the next go around, because we have a few other things coming down that require us to perform additional administrative rule changes probably next year. In fact, is what you'd see us. The other program, and on this list, out of the 5 items that you see listed here, the first 4 are for the Building Codes and Standards section. And this bill I'm going to get into is actually adding to that list, and I'll cover that in the next slide. The Mobile Home Park Oversight Program is a newer program that was created as a result of legislation in 2019. And it has rulemaking authority as well, since it's also a regulatory program. But that rulemaking authority lies with Allison George, the division director, rather than you, the State Housing Board. So an interesting difference between the 2 programs. Any questions about that? And feel free, this is interactive presentation, so if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and fire away. Now, as I mentioned, you are the authority, right? And this is actually spelled out in statute. So if you're ever curious about the statute that governs modular construction in the state, I encourage you to visit Title 24, Article 32, Part 33. And if you go to 3304 and 3305, you'll learn all the details you need to know about the State Housing Board and how it is implicated in this process. But in the interest of time and not cluttering the slide, I copied and pasted just one section of this that is relevant to this discussion. And as you can see, if you compare this to the earlier slide, some things have been added in that list of 4 that I mentioned. If you look at towards the bottom of the slide, you'll see the implementation of sections blah, 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 blah. That's tiny homes. So we are going to be in the business of regulating tiny homes, which is a big part of why there's a bill before you that we need to implement into the form of rules. And then the last one is also new as well. We regulate all sorts of off-site construction, things that are built off-site in a plant, if you will, brought on site to be installed. We don't regulate the foundation systems for those products, those structures, if you will. And some jurisdictions in Colorado, I know it's hard to believe, do not have a building department for some of the unincorporated counties in the state. There's about 8 of them or so. As a result, we are now in the business of regulating foundation systems for those jurisdictions that do not have a building department. It was a loophole that was closed through this bill that I'm going to get into later. Those are 2 new parts of what we'll be regulating through the Building Codes and Standards section at the Division of Housing. And of course, you will be helping us implement. Now, oh, sorry, I heard a beep. Someone have a question? Or is that a chat?
No, that was me, Mo. Thanks. This is Sam Betters.
Hey, Sam.
It's a question. The last slide, it showed us as an advisory committee in this role. And then the previous slide, you talked to us about being a rulemaking committee. Those seem to be different.
Yeah, so the what you're seeing where it says advisory committee here is actually a section heading in statute that covers rules and advisory committee and enforcement. But within that, I don't know why they laid out the section heading that way. It really should have said State Housing Board first, because paragraph 1 that you see is about the State Housing Board. Paragraph 3 is the advisory committee from that same section. So that's just the section title that talks about the advisory committee. So I was actually segueing to the advisory committee, what its role is. You are the decision maker, but you guys are not code experts. I would guess. Are any of you
Candace.
well versed in code? Speak, Candace.
No, not even close.
But yeah, so that's why the law is set up the way it is to the General Assembly, the legislative body, to actually help you by establishing an advisory committee. So this group that you're looking at this slide, they are the code experts. They're the ones that are helping inform Sam and myself and others, the Division of Housing that work with it, to incorporate what is recommended by this group into the form of proposed rules for your consideration. So that way the pressure is not on you to understand intimately the International Residential Code, for example, right?
Thanks for that clarification.
No, I'm glad you asked the question. It was a perfect segue. And this group actually used to be 12 members, and it has grown. We've added 3 members to it, 2 from the tiny home industry and 1 from energy conservation. So the second 2 and the third, Roman numeral 9, Roman numeral 10 are the new positions on this advisory committee. And we've had several meetings with them over the last several months, starting from November 1st through April 4th, I think 12 meetings total, to prepare for this rulemaking hearing. So there shouldn't be any surprises when it gets to you guys on May 9th, but you never know. And that's why we're going through this discussion, to give you guys an understanding of what it is that's coming before you and to prepare you for that discussion when we actually get to it. Any questions about the advisory committee and the State Housing Board and how the two work together? All right. So the reason why we're having this conversation, as I mentioned, is we are going to be implementing House Bill 22-1242. This is from the last legislative session, so that's why the 22 is before the rest of the numbering. And it's a significantly large bill. As soon as I'm done presenting, I'll drop it in the chat for you so you can review it at your leisure. Or Sam, if you've got the link handy, if you could drop it in there for them. Sam Albrecht, that is, not you, Sam. And as you can see, some of it we've already covered. Like the first bullet is the 3 members that I mentioned earlier. The big piece of this is we are now going to be regulating a structure that has not been previously regulated in the state of Colorado, at least not formally as a statewide program. It has been left up to local building departments in order to determine what to do with tiny homes. I'm sure you guys have seen the popular shows on TV about tiny homes. The problem is it's a very confusing landscape. Tiny home is a broad term. It can cover all sorts of structures that are small in nature. Some of them, from a building code standpoint, are considered to be homes or dwellings, and some are not. They're actually considered to be vehicles, even though they may be somebody's home. And so this particular bill makes a clear distinction between what is a dwelling, what is movable, right, from what is actually a vehicle, even though the two may look very similar. They're actually built to 2 different types of codes. And so we're going to be regulating the dwelling type. And that is different from a modular home, in that a modular home is just like a site-built home. It's on a permanent foundation, right? This type of home is highly movable and may or may not be on a permanent foundation. Most likely would be on a temporary foundation. And of course, that is separate and distinct from a manufactured HUD code home, which is regulated by the federal government to completely different codes as well. So there's a lot of moving parts and confusion. You're going to hear or see in writing through the administrative rules these different terms: tiny home, modular home, manufactured home. And we usually refer to that last one as a manufactured HUD code home. And all 3 of those, just know, are different things, different codes. And so for the tiny homes that are dwellings, there is no national code for them. There was no state code for them until hopefully recently, when you guys adopt what is proposed and recommended to you for adoption from the Technical Advisory Committee. And there are some other changes in the bill. As mentioned earlier, the foundation systems is another part that we're addressing. And then another nuance in regulation is, even though we, through the statewide program, regulate modular construction, sale, and installation, and now to include tiny homes across all jurisdictions, there are unique aspects of local requirements that we also incorporate into our process. As you can imagine, we have a very geographically diverse state, right? So we account for unique wind load requirements, for instance, wind shear requirements, right? So wind speed, because as you can imagine, some parts of the state are breezier than others, and some parts get a lot more snow than others. So we account for that. And through this bill, they added a third item, which is wildfire risk. As you can imagine, that's become something come to the fore in our state in a lot of areas because of a lot of the wildfires we've been experiencing in the last few years because of climate change. And so that was added as well. We had now to address that when we're reviewing plans for constructing modular homes or tiny homes in the future. And then we also have included in that bill is an escrow bonding requirement for manufacturers that didn't previously exist. I wouldn't spend much time on this one because this one may actually be deleted from the statute. We are currently required to implement this piece because of 1242, but there is a land use bill I'm sure some of you are familiar with, if not all of you, that was introduced that has a small piece in it that actually deletes this provision because it was determined that it was actually redundant. It wasn't necessary. But for now, we're going to proceed with implementing it. But by the time we actually have the rulemaking hearing on May 9th, we should hopefully have an update for you that actually we can remove that part because it's no longer necessary. And then lastly, but not least, is we're just using this opportunity, since it has been 2 years, to clean up other areas of the rules that really need to be addressed. And you're going to see quite a bit of that in this document that you will be seeing in preparation for May 9th. Any questions before we get to the actual process itself on this last slide or anything else I've covered? Hearing none, I will proceed.
Mo, I have one question for you on
Yes.
modular housing in general.
Mhm.
A few decades ago, one of the biggest concerns with modular housing was that it wouldn't have the same estimated useful life as traditional stick-built housing. Has that changed over time?
I think what you're probably referring to is manufactured housing,
Yep.
Which is what we refer to as manufactured HUD code homes, because they are a different code. They are built to a I don't want to say a cheaper code, a less costly code. They can do less. They're required. The options are limited with them, I should say, to keep the cost down, right? And they are, of course, can be situated in a mobile home park, for example, on a temporary foundation. And they are also registered and titled like a vehicle, right? And so there are, yes, they can wear differently. A modular home, on the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, is like a site-built home. They go on a permanent foundation. They may be built off-site, but it's the same codes, right? Installed permanently and just being used differently, right? But the reality is it just really depends on the homeowner. These things can last for decades and decades and decades. We have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the HUD code manufactured homes came into existence effectively on June 15th, 1976. So those structures have been regulated through the federal program since that date. Prior to that, we had mobile homes. We know these parks as mobile home parks, or some people, go back even further and refer to them as trailer homes, right? Those still are in existence, even though they predate that June 15, 1976 date. So we still see quite a bit of them. Some of them are in great shape and some are not. So it really just depends on the user. But also the reality is the codes are different for them. And so what we're talking about, what we actually regulate through this statewide program are modular homes. We help the federal government with HUD code manufactured homes, but that's really under their purview. We don't actually regulate their construction in the state. We help them with overseeing the installation, the sale and installation of them. And of course, if we ever get a complaint about the construction of one, we help them resolve it. But as far as what you guys are approving codes for, it's strictly for that modular product, which is just like a site-built home. Does that help?
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. That is very helpful.
Yeah, no
Nancy, I
problem.
see that your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. On one of the slides, and thank you for this, it's really interesting. I always get modular and manufactured mixed up. So thank you. It said something about rulemaking and enforcement. Who does the enforcement, and what is that piece of it all about?
Oh, that's where all the fun is.
I'm sure.
And no, it's actually not fun at all. I'm just kidding. That's actually the Division of Housing. That's not you guys, mercifully. And so the way the statute is set up is you help write the rules, if you will, of what we're regulating, and the Division of Housing takes care of the enforcement piece. So that's actually Sam, right, as the director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight. And then he's got a team below him for the Building Codes and Standards section. And for that, we have a program manager, Donnie Featherman. At some point in time, you'll probably meet him. And then we've got a team of people underneath Donnie, including engineers who do plan reviews, inspectors that are out in the field inspecting these units, both their construction and installation, and also responding to consumer complaints about if one of those two things are not working the way it's supposed to be working, right? We also have office staff. So we have a whole team that work on the enforcement side of things. We also, because as I described to you, that's not a huge team, and we cover all 64 counties, right? We also work with private sectors. So the way the statute is constructed, we can empower third-party inspection agencies, third-party plan review agencies to help us with our work. We also team up with local building departments, and they do a lot of the inspection work for us if they have the capability and interest of doing so. So we work with quite a few people, but all of it is under the umbrella of the Division of Housing, which has the oversight responsibilities through enforcement.
Okay,
Great
that makes
question.
sense. It's like a building department. And so then
It is.
does this committee write the penalties? So maybe this committee doesn't do the enforcement, but if a builder or an individual doesn't follow the rules, then who sets the penalties?
That would be a Division of Housing, not you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just set the rules and then they worry about the rest of it.
Correct, exactly. So
We don't do the
mercifully,
enforcement piece.
correct. Otherwise, your meetings would get a lot longer
Okay.
and more frequent, unfortunately.
That
So
makes
we've been able to keep this divide and conquer approach, if you will. Have you guys set the rules, and then the Division of Housing itself handles the rest.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Yeah, no problem. Great question. Any others about the actual setup of the division, State Housing Board, TAC? Yes?
Hi, it's LaDawn. I was just going to add on the manufactured homes piece. Some of them actually have a VIN number and
Correct.
they're sold not as personal property, not as real estate. So that's something that you have to watch out for with these as well. They have to relinquish the VIN number with the DMV, and it has to be purged to the land in order for it to be considered real estate.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. That's why that temporary and permanent foundation I mentioned earlier are very important,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if it's on a temporary foundation, it's just like a vehicle, in essence, even though it's a dwelling. If it's on a permanent foundation, as you described, that title gets purged and is considered a regular dwelling, like a site-built home or a modular home.
But they've put the fear in us not to believe it just because it looks like it's on a personal, on a permanent foundation, that we have to like do the research and check the VIN number. So
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff flying out there.
yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on with them.
For sure. What is interesting is, and we're way early in the process here, but there is potential because, as you can imagine, these are not vehicles, right? We're talking about actual dwellings that just, and when we're talking about them being moved, except for the tiny home, that's a different animal. It's designed to be highly movable, but a HUD code manufactured home is really designed to be moved from the plant in which it was built to its destination. And that destination may be a temporary foundation, but they're not really movable to be moved around a lot, right? And that destination might be a mobile home park, right? Where somebody may no longer be able to afford the lot rent, and now they have to physically move that home, which is not designed to be moved around that much, even though it's on a temporary foundation and it's on a chassis. It's built on a chassis, right? So that's where it gets really confusing as well. But anyway, all of that, the movie, you know, the title part of it is regulated by the Department of Revenue, another state agency, right? And they have it regulated with the rest of the vehicles. And they find that to be confusing, which is understandable because these are not really vehicles. And so there is a potential movement here to bring that part of it, the titling of HUD code manufactured homes, pre-1976 mobile homes and tiny homes, to us in the future to regulate, which hopefully will provide some clarity and distinction between them and other vehicles. But that's way down the road and a whole nother process. And if we ever cross that bridge, we'll certainly educate you guys on it. But there's definitely a distinction between a HUD code manufactured home, a modular home, and a tiny home. And two of those three, tiny home, HUD code manufactured home, most likely you will see with a VIN and the title until such time as it's put on a permanent foundation and purged. I'm glad you brought that up, though. Anything else before we jump into the actual rulemaking process itself? These are great questions. Keep firing, please, and comments. All right, so we talked about the Technical Advisory Committee. I mentioned the 12 meetings, and those are not just with those 15 members and us. We invite everybody to those conversations. We started off with the tiny home folks first because this was new to them. As you can imagine, it was a shock to their system to also go from no regulation and possible regulation in a few jurisdictions here and there to now statewide regulation, especially when there isn't a good national program for us to follow, or them to follow for that matter. So we start with them, and I think they have a good understanding through Sam's great stewardship and leadership on what this would all look like and are more comfortable with it. And of course, we started incorporating our regular modular folks as we got into other areas that really impact modular and everything. So as I said, shouldn't be any surprises when we get to the rulemaking hearing, since we've had plenty of opportunity to iron out a lot of questions and concerns. But you never know. Somebody may find out in a few weeks about this whole process and reach out to us about it, which is why we still have the formal part that goes through you guys. And that formal part starts really with the proposed rules once we file them for public comment. And that's with the Secretary of State, which we did. And those proposed rules were published in the Colorado Register, I believe on the 10th, yesterday. So everybody should know about it now. We also filed these rules with the Department of Regulatory Agencies. They have an office known as the Office of Policy Research and Regulatory Reform. We are statutorily required to file rules with them as well. And they disseminate to folks signed up to receive information from them about rulemaking initiatives by other state agencies. And they have already sent that out as well. And of course, last but not least, Sam has shared this with everybody he can get his hands on to let them know about it as well. And all of those rulemaking notices have provided to the public a deadline in which to provide written testimony in response to the proposed rules. They are also allowed to come and present to you and provide verbal testimony at the hearing itself, or they can do both, right? But for the written comments, and they can provide the written comments at the day of the hearing itself, it's not helpful, right? It's preferred to get it in advance so we can consider it, so you guys have an opportunity to decide at the meeting with some, after some time to really digest on what to do, right? And so we provide that deadline of April 24th. And then that gives Sam some time, myself, to go through those written comments and then incorporate those written comments as presented in a rulemaking packet to you guys, along with the proposed rules as they were noticed, and potentially any recommendations that we may have in response to written comments that were submitted in response to proposed rules. And we would like to get that out to you guys 2 weekends in advance of the rulemaking hearing. I think you guys normally get your packets 1 week in advance. Is that correct? Can somebody answer that question?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you guys okay with receiving our packet 2 weeks in advance so you can have that done before you get to the other work that you normally do? Or do you want them all together 1 week in advance? Whatever works best for you guys.
I think spread them out.
Okay, so this current plan is
Opinion.
preferred? Sorry, I was talking over somebody. Is this preferred plan? Is this plan preferred then? Proposed plan?
Yes, please.
Okay, great, awesome, thank you. And then, of course, the rulemaking hearing itself is scheduled for May 9th. So please do not miss that. We're gonna need a majority of you guys present in order to be able to adopt any rules at that time. And for those of you who have not been through this, you don't wanna miss it. It's very exciting. Actually, it's not that exciting, but it is for some of us that love doing this kind of stuff. It will be in person rather than virtual. And that will help move things along a little bit more quickly if we do it that way, because I know you guys have a lot to do and potentially may have a lot in your docket at that time as well. And then just so you know, and I've stressed this in a couple of slides, the regulation of tiny homes starts effectively by law on July 1st of 2023. So we're cutting it close here. We need to make sure that at least the parts that are proposed to implement tiny home regulation need to be adopted in time to ensure that those parts are effective to coincide with the effective date of the law, right? And in order to do that, we actually then have to adopt those parts of the rule no later than May 11th, which is 2 days after your rulemaking hearing. But those of you who've been around for at least 1 or 2 iterations of rulemaking hearings before the State Housing Board, the plan is always to adopt, if possible, everything at that date, right? To not table anything. But just in case something comes up that really needs to be reworked because some amazing written testimony is provided to make us think that we need to take a pause and revisit and do some more research, we actually have, or you have 180 days in which to adopt something after it went through a rulemaking hearing. So you don't have to adopt that day, but of course, we're asking that it be adopted within a couple of days in order to implement this bill by June 30th or July 1st, 2023. But if there's anything that requires more time, you technically have 180 days in which to use that time to make sure that we present this to you in a better fashion for you guys to consider and then adopt. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sorry, I kind of stumbled through the last part of this. All right. Now, the hearing itself is highly scripted and choreographed. Well, highly scripted. It's not going to be choreographed. And it's really your fearless chair leading the charge here. But since it is in person, there will be a sign-in sheet. And so we'll be asking folks to sign in, you know, their name, who they represent, et cetera, et cetera. And that list will be provided to you, Madam Chair, before we kick off the hearing itself. And then Sam will be present, sitting. I don't know how you guys normally are seated. It's been a while since I've been to one of your meetings in person. But we do ask for you, the DOH staff that are listening, that we want to make sure that Sam and our attorney are seated next to the chair, because there may be times when they need to provide some advice as the proceeding is playing out. It hopefully won't happen, but it does happen from time to time. So if they could be seated right next to her, that'd be great. And then, and of course, that attorney is there to provide any legal advice you may need. And then, as I mentioned, this is highly scripted, so we actually have a script that's multiple pages. And apologies in advance. It has a lot of legal language in it, which is not fun to read over several pages, but it's a requirement that we have to do. We have to enter that information into the record. So all this is about entering information into the record, ultimately. And then, Madam Chair, you'd be calling people to testify in the order presented on that sign-up sheet. We are going to limit them to 3 minutes apiece just to keep things moving along. But of course, if you want somebody to go longer than that, that is you have the ability to do that. And then there's an opportunity for you to ask other board members Of course, you yourself can ask questions, follow-up questions, and you can also ask Sam and the attorney if they have any questions as well. I will not be present, as I mentioned earlier, so this will be completely run by you guys, Sam, and the attorney. And then ultimately, when you're done entering all that testimony, oh, yes, question?
So Mo, when we've done this in the past, I believe it was about an hour or two before our regular state housing board meeting. It was almost separate.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything on our calendar for May 9th.
Yeah, this
Will it
one's
be
scheduled-
before or after?
It's going to be at 3 o'clock. Oops, I can't highlight it with my mouse because it makes it click. So if you can see the third to last bullet, in person at 3 p.m. So it's after your normal business this time. And the reason why we did that is this is the first time we're going to be regulating a whole new population, tiny home folks. And we've done a lot to include them in these discussions, and there really shouldn't be any surprises. But because it's so new to them, we maybe get more than normal in the form of people signing up to testify about this bill and the administrative rules to implement it, if that makes sense. So because of that, because we're just so unsure how many people may end up testifying, because if you probably remember from the past, it wasn't that many, we decided in conversations with Andrew that it probably made sense to put it at the end of your docket for that day versus at the front.
Okay. And how long do you anticipate it will take? I'm just concerned that it's not on our calendars. At least it's not on mine. It might be on everyone else's. But just to make sure that we have the attendance that we need, because I believe you said we needed a quorum.
Yeah, we definitely need a quorum. I'm hoping it's not more than an hour, but it could potentially be.
Okay.
So it could be several hours. I just don't know. Yeah. And apologies in advance if it turns out to be longer than an hour or two. I don't anticipate it being more than 2 hours, but I just can't promise you that it will be less than 2 hours.
Okay. I think we need to just make sure that everyone can attend for a couple of hours on that day. Sam?
Thanks, Anthea. Mo, I just had a couple questions. One is tiny home people a politically correct term these days? I'm not sure.
Good question.
Yeah.
Fans of tiny homes. How about that?
There we go. Okay. My real question is, do you or Sam anticipate that any of the proposed rules are of dramatically different, of course, excepting the ones related to tiny homes, which is all brand new, but or is anyone in the industry taking exception to any of the proposed rules or any controversies that we're walking into?
Not that I'm aware of, but anybody can come and testify and surprise us. That's why we try to be as conservative with our approach as possible for that potential outcome. But as I mentioned, we've had them all at the table, and we've had some robust conversations. There's obviously been some disagreement, but as far as I can tell, there's an understanding of why and how things are proposed the way they are. And it's not just like manufacturers that are present and sellers and installers, but there's an association called the Rocky Mountain Home Association that represents, and in fact, they also represent mobile home parks, which is regulated by our other program. But they also represent a lot of the manufacturers, the sellers and installers, and they're always at the table, even though they don't have a seat on the technical advisory committee. There really shouldn't be any surprises, but you just don't know. And there are some items we've made clear to them we can't address through this particular rulemaking hearing, but there will be future opportunities to do so. And one of the items that's actually identified in the land use bill as well is empowering the technical advisory committee and the division of housing to look into other potential areas that might require statutory changes to make this a better landscape for industry and consumers. And so that process itself may help address a lot of the questions and concerns we've received through this particular process that cannot be addressed in this particular rulemaking hearing to implement 1242. So more to follow. I think there's another question. Sam, did I address your question?
Yeah. So I was just going to add, Mo, it's Sam. I was just going to add on to Sam Better's question. We have sent out these draft rules. We've had all the industry stakeholders involved since November, right? The manufacturers, the sellers, the installers, like Mo said, the Rocky Mountain Home Builders Association. We also sent it out. We have local building departments involved on that tech, but we sent it out to 900 people in our database, every local building department, everybody in our database back in March to give a preview of the rules. And then we sent it out again when we were at the draft administrative rules. So Mo is exactly right. We're hoping for no surprises. And that's why we asked them for written testimony and comments so that we can prepare you guys in that package that goes out before the meeting.
Right. And will like the same energy codes apply for both tiny homes as well as standard homes?
Yes, sir. We're using all the same building codes and the energy codes for tiny homes as well as modular homes.
Well, yeah, but there's a difference too. So when you get your proposed rules, I don't remember what page they start on, but there's an appendix Q in your proposed rules. Those are specific to the tiny homes themselves. And there will be differences between that product and regular homes that you will see covered in that particular part of the proposed rules. So appendix Q, keep an eye out for appendix Q. That's going to be more specific and tailored to tiny homes versus regular modular homes.
Yeah, thanks.
And just keep in mind, when you're reading the rules themselves too, when we talk about modular, what you guys help us regulate, it's not just homes, residential dwellings. We also regulate quite a bit of commercial industrial modular products. And we also regulate, as you'll see when you review this document, site-built hotels, motels, and multifamily structures in jurisdictions that don't have a building department. Now, those don't come up very frequently, but they do happen. And we are charged statutorily to regulate them. So you're going to see a bunch of stuff in there, but just know that dwellings and other residential products, are separate. And within even the residential ones, tiny homes are handled a little bit differently than regular modular homes. And you're going to see it's a lot. And for those, I know Sam, you've seen them before, and Thea, you've seen these rules before. But for those of you who are new, the rules themselves may be a shock to the system because they are there's a lot of rules because there's a lot to the landscape that we regulate, not just residential units in particular. All right, and then of course the goal at the conclusion of this is to get a motion to either adopt all the rules as proposed, basically meaning no modifications to them, right? Or adopt as amended based on testimony or recommendations received from Division of Housing staff or the attorney, or to table for additional information. Those in essence are really the three types of motions you'd be working with. Somebody would have to make that motion. You have to entertain a second to that motion and then call a vote, Madam Chair. And of course, we would be there advising you on how to proceed based on the information we get in response to the proposed rules in preparation for the rulemaking hearing. And just a reminder, once again, we're trying to get, at the very least, tiny homes regulated and by July 1st, or starting on July 1st, and having administrative rules to support that regulation in place. So that's the goal. And then here's our contact information. If you have any questions or concerns between now and then, or even after the rulemaking hearing, don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, I will not be there for this go around, but you can, of course, reach out to me at any point in time to discuss the process or anything you want to talk about, just so we don't get to see that often. And that is a wrap, unless you want me to revisit any of these slides before I stop presenting. All right.
Thank you for that, Mo. Thanks for preparing us for May 9th. So if all board members, make sure you mark your calendars for an in-person, very long meeting. Look forward to it. I'm sorry to hear that you're going to be missing the FUNMO. We'll give you an update.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's the end of today's State Housing Board meeting. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.